And regarding state sales taxes, should state sales tax be extended to internet sales, and why or why not?
Well, you know, the story I tell is of my young son who every Christmas wants a new car for his electric train. And I go to the train store and the owner says to me, Bill, dads like you come in, they look at the trains, then they go home and order it on the internet and don't pay sales tax. It's not fair. It's killing me. Well, last year when I went back at Christmas time again, the store had closed. He's out of business. It's not fair to those traditional business people in the state of California to have an unfair tax advantage given appropriately when we wanted internet sales to ramp up, to be robust and effective. They are. And so now I think fairness dictates having equal treatment. It ought to be national, though. It shouldn't just be a state policy. I'm not even sure it's legally doable at the state level, but a national policy would make a lot of sense.
In terms of the future of our state's economy in the coming years, what do you see as the key factors that will shape our economy?
Well, I'm optimistic for a number of reasons. We have geographic and demographic advantages. We're the window on the Pacific where all the great growth is largely going to occur in the next century. We have the diverse populations who came from those various places. Well, we brought people in, adventurers and risk takers from all over the planet here. They're here with language, cultural context, family ties, and so on. So it's a time when we can succeed. We also have a younger population, so when much of the country is aging, we have the consumer pool, the labor pool that can mean we're successful. Half the venture capital investments in new starts is in California. So there's a lot of promising things. The challenge is education. We've got to make sure that these young people are well educated or we won't succeed as much as we'd wish. But that's, if we do that, a recipe for a wonderful future in California.
In terms of your job as state treasurer, if you're elected again, what will be your benchmarks for success in the job?
Well, seeing that we make prudent investments, that we invest in the things people expect, things like schools and universities and transportation and water systems and so on. So I help to guide that and to try to do that effectively, honestly, and well. To speak out forcefully with respect to reform in Sacramento, whether it's pension reform or fiscal and budget reform, to be active in that area, but mostly to be a consistent defender of taxpayers' interests. That's basically what the banker does here, the treasurer does, is my client are the taxpayers and voters in California that need an advocate, and I hope I can do that in an effective way.
Are there issues on which you and your key opponents agree?
Well, I suppose, you know, as a general matter, all elected people agree about the basics, that we want safe communities, that we want a strong California, good jobs, that we want a clean environment, that we want good schools. I mean, we all share those goals. The vigorous debate is often, how do you do it? Personally, I don't think tax cuts for the wealthiest in our society, tax cuts for the largest corporations in our country are the right way to do it. I would rather see more money in the pockets of middle-class Californians. So I think in those ways we may disagree, but the goals are similar.
So in terms of the Office of State Treasurer, what do you consider are the most difficult challenges facing the office?
Well, it's always hard when we don't have a state budget. And I think, frankly, the blame is shared by people in both houses and both parties, that they've just got to learn how to compromise and not just come to Sacramento with their ideological rigidity and infinite wisdom and not get the job done. So that's part of my job, is to kind of go and in an avuncular way say, you got to learn to develop mediative skills. The legislature is kind of the social glue in a diverse society, where all the interests and perspectives and regions come together and try to reach accommodations that make everyone feel like the system is responsive to their needs. They've failed, and we need to get back to that traditional leadership.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of the pension system, which you mentioned earlier, what reforms would you like to see made to California's pension system, and why?
Sure. I have the honor of serving on both the PERS and STIRV pension boards, along with a number of other people. I spend a lot of time trying to understand their practices, their health benefits, their pension programs, investments, and so on. Two things stand out. One is we've got to prohibit the kind of pension spiking that we've heard about in recent years, where some city manager or other high official typically manages to bundle a lot of sick leave, vacation pay, or whatever into their final year's pay in order to spike their pension and get higher payouts in the future. It's not right. It's got to be corrected. Legislation should be adopted to address that. The other thing is we're finding now there were serious ethical challenges with many of the professional staff and board members, like a decade ago. Before I got there, but still, we're cleaning up after the elephant. We've got to get a lot of that work done so that there won't be ethical misuses of their authority in the future, and making investments with their buddies and that sort of thing. So I'm very active in that way and intend to continue to do that.
In regards to your campaign, how are you funding your campaign for state treasurer?
Well, statewide office is a lot of people when you represent in your district everyone from Oregon to Mexico. Television is expensive. We try to raise modest amounts to buy a TV or a radio ad, and I continue to do that. I do have some surplus funds carried forward from prior years where I didn't use them, so I can rely on that some. I am not a person of any significant personal wealth, so I can't do what some candidates get to do. Other than that, it's word of mouth. I'm pleased that lots of Republicans, Democrats, and independents are friends and supporters, and I hope that they'll keep talking to their neighbors.
Anything you want to add on who else supports your candidacy and why they're supporting you?
Well, not surprisingly, my opponent is a sort of typical Orange County conservative Republican, and so naturally those groups go there. On the other side, the groups that tend to support people like me are teachers and firefighters and police officers and so on, nurses, environmentalists. I think probably one of our significant disagreements is I'm more active in the area to address global warming. I don't want to roll back the current laws that try to get emission standards established in California. We disagree about some of those kinds of issues, and so the environmental community tends to help people like me, and so it's a good group of people, and I'm proud to be a spokesman for their perspectives on many occasions.
One last quick question, and then we need to wrap up here.
Okay.
Is it important for individual candidates to publicly release their tax documents and other personal financial information?
I've given it out for decades. No one seems particularly interested in what's on mine because it's basically a salary and modest other sorts of income. But I think public disclosure of that information is a wise thing to do for candidates. The public's entitled to know whether there could be self-dealing, conflicts of interest, and so on if someone gets elected.
And so finally, without referencing your opponents, why should Californians vote for you to become California's state treasurer?
Well, they've been good to me in numerous occasions. I'm honored to have served them. I hope that I deserve the reputation as an honest, outspoken elected official that works hard and does it ethically. I hope they'll look at the record of accomplishments, whether it's as treasurer or attorney general, and decide that I'm one who merits their continued support. I like the work, and I'd be honored to be reelected.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry to say that we have run out of time for any further questions, and we appreciate your taking the time to come and answer these questions, and we wish you the very best in your campaign.
Thanks, Carol, and
You're
thanks to
welcome.
the League of Women Voters for your leadership in this
You're
way.
welcome.